What's the title? Security guard throws Jasmine Crockett out, then realizes he made a terrible mistake. And you think that pin means something. Anyone can get a pin, ma'am. My apologies. Ma'am, it's just procedure. A procedure you seem quite enthusiastic about enforcing right now. Right here, with me. The guard offered a smile that didn't reach his eyes. One of those laminated smiles. Hard edges, reflecting the harsh fluorescent lighting of the corridor. Just doing my job. Keeping the place secure. You understand. I understand security. I also understand selective enforcement. His posture straightened. A little too straight. Are you implying something? Implying? No. I'm asking. What specific protocol are you invoking right now? For this hallway? At this time? His hand twitched near his radio. A nervous habit, maybe. Or a practice threat. Standard identification check. For restricted areas. This isn't a restricted area. Not usually. Not for me. He stepped closer, invading her space just slightly. Enough to be felt. Says who? Says the fact I walk this hall every day. Multiple times a day. Says the pin you just dismissed. The one issued by the sergeant at arms. He chuckled. A dry, brittle sound. Look, I don't know who you think you are. But rules are rules. And I'm the one enforcing them here. So your identification. Please. Now. She held his gaze. Steady. Unblinking. Her bag remained on her shoulder. Her hand stayed loosely at her sides. You seem stressed. Is everything all right? With you? His jaw tightened. The smile vanished completely now, replaced by a thin, hard line. There's no need for that. No need for what? Concern. Or questions you don't want to answer. A few staffers hurried past, eyes darting away. Not wanting to get involved. The air thickened. Static electricity before a storm. His voice lowered, becoming almost conspiratorial. But sharp underneath. Let's not make a scene. Just show me your ID. We can all get on with our day. Who is making a scene? I asked a question. You seem unable or unwilling to answer it directly. What protocol? Cited. He puffed out his chest slightly, readjusting his belt. Authority reasserted. Or attempting to. My authority is the protocol. I'm Capitol Police. I determine who needs checking. So it's discretionary. Based on what? A feeling you had. He flushed slightly, a tide of red creeping up his neck. This is official business. I need your identification, or you'll need to leave this area. Leave. This is my workplace. Not according to me. Not right now. Not without ID. She tilted her head slightly, a gesture of curiosity, but it landed like a challenge. And what identification would satisfy you? My driver's license. My congressional ID card. The pin that apparently means nothing. His eyes narrowed. He was losing control. And he knew it. The pin is decorative unless verified. Your congressional ID. Let me see it. She didn't move. Didn't reach for her bag. Why now? Why me? Were you stopping everyone in this hallway? I didn't see you stop that group that just passed. Or the gentleman ahead of me. He waved a dismissive hand. I know them. They're clear. You know them. But not me. Despite seeing me walk here daily. Despite the pin. Is that correct? This is your final warning, ma'am. Identification. Or you will be escorted out. Escorted out? Of the United States Capitol complex. Where I work. As a member of Congress, he scoffed. An ugly sound. Right. And I'm the president. Show me the ID or let's go. He gestured down the hall, towards the exit. His stance shifted. Ready to move. To enforce. Her voice remained low. Even, but ice formed on the edges. You believe I'm lying. You believe I don't belong here. You believe you have the right to remove me. Based on nothing. Nothing but your assumption. I'm following procedure. His voice cracked slightly on the last word. A tell. A sign the armor was dented. Are you? Or are you performing? Performing what? I don't know. You tell me. What is this performance for? Who are you trying to impress? Or intimidate? He took another step closer, crowding her deliberately now, trying to use his physical presence, his uniform, his presumed authority. Okay, that's it. We're done here. You're coming with me. He reached out, not quite touching her, but the intention was clear. A physical removal was imminent. She stood her ground, didn't flinch, didn't yield an inch. Her gaze flickered past him. Down the hall, someone was approaching, someone with purpose. His hand hovered in the air between them. A frozen moment of aggression. Take your hand away. Her voice was quiet, deadly quiet, but it carried the weight of command. Not a request. An order. He hesitated. The approach of the other figure registered. A senior staffer. Someone the guard definitely knew. The staffer's eyes widened slightly, taking in the scene. The guard's aggressive posture. Her calm defiance. Is there a problem here, officer? The guard retracted his hand quickly. Too quickly. Just doing a routine ID check, sir. This individual was refusing to cooperate. Individual. She's not an individual. She's Congresswoman Crockett. The staffer's voice was laced with disbelief and annoyance. Congresswoman Crockett. From Texas. The guard's face went slack. The color drained from his face, leaving behind a pasty white mask. Congresswoman. Yes, Congresswoman, who you were about to physically escort out for failing to meet your discretionary identification protocol. The guard swallowed hard. His Adam's apple bobbed visibly. I didn't recognize her. Without the official ID. The pin wasn't enough. Her repeated statements weren't enough. My presence here wasn't enough. Her questions were soft, almost gentle, but they landed like blows, each one chipping away at his crumbling authority. He looked from the staffer back to her, panic flickering in his eyes. Ma'am, Congresswoman, I apologize. It was a mistake. A misunderstanding. Was it? She held his gaze again. That long, slow blink. It felt like an eternity passed in that silence. The hallway seemed unnaturally quiet now. Even the fluorescent lights hummed louder. Or maybe it was the blood pounding in the guard's ears. You didn't recognize me. Or you didn't believe me. Which is it? He stammered. It's just, we have procedures. You mentioned that. Repeatedly. But you failed to cite the specific procedure. When asked, so let me ask again. What procedure requires a member of Congress, wearing their official pin in a non-restricted area they traverse daily, to be subjected to a discretionary ID check and threatened with removal by an officer who admits he simply didn't recognize them? He had no answer. He just stood there, mute. His earlier confidence evaporated, leaving behind a man looking suddenly small in his uniform. The staffer watched them both, his expression carefully neutral, but his eyes conveyed a clear message to the guard. You messed up badly. Congresswoman, do you need assistance? She finally broke eye contact with the guard, turning slightly towards the staffer. Thank you, David. I believe the officer was just finishing his performance. He seems to have forgotten his lines. The guard flinched at the word performance. Ma'am, I assure you. Assure me of what? That this won't happen again. How can you assure me of that when you can't even articulate why it happened this time? Was it my face? My clothes? My hair? What triggered your procedure? He shook his head mutely, looking down at his polished shoes. Anything but meet her eyes. She adjusted her bag on her shoulder. A simple, everyday movement. But in this context, it felt final. A dismissal. I have work to do, representing the people of my district. People who expect me to be here. Doing my job. Not being harassed in the hallway because someone feels entitled to wield their power indiscriminately. She started to walk past him. Her steps measured. Calm. As she drew level with him, she paused again. Very close, speaking softly for his ears only. But the intensity vibrated outwards. That pin you dismissed. It means something. It signifies the trust placed in me. Trust you actively undermined today. Think about that. And then she walked away, leaving him standing there. Rooted to the spot, David, the staffer, gave the guard one last hard look, then turned and followed the congresswoman. The few onlookers who had lingered exchanged glances. A low murmur rippled through the small group. Did you see that? He really tried to throw her out. Unbelievable. The guard remained frozen, his face still pale, his breathing shallow, the weight of his mistake settling heavily upon him. The laminated smile was long gone, replaced by dawning horror. What had he done? He looked down the hallway where she had disappeared, then back at the onlookers. Their expressions ranged from disbelief to disgust. He felt their judgment. Sharp and silent, he fumbled with his radio, his hands shaking slightly. Control, this is Unit 7. Need a supervisor to my location. Hallway near HC5. Repeat, supervisor requested, HC5. His voice was thin, strained, the authority stripped away, leaving only the man. Afraid, exposed. The radio crackled a response, but he barely heard it. His mind replayed the encounter. Her calm, his aggression, her questions, his deflections, her final words. Trust you actively undermined today. He closed his eyes briefly. A wave of nausea washed over him. This was bad. This was really, really bad. How could he have been so stupid? So blind? He saw members walk these halls every single day. He knew the pins. He knew the routines. What made today different? What made her different in his eyes? He didn't want to answer that question. Not even to himself. But the answer hovered there. Ugly and undeniable. Bias. Unconscious, maybe. Malicious, he hadn't thought so. But the result was the same. Abuse of power. Humiliation. Not hers. His. And likely soon, hers publicly if she chose. He opened his eyes. The hallway seemed longer now. Emptier. Accusing. He saw his reflection distorted in the polished floor tiles. A man in a uniform, suddenly looking like a costume. A costume he didn't deserve to wear. The supervisor was approaching, his face grim. He must have heard the initial radio chatter. Or maybe the whispers traveled faster than sound in these halls. The guard braced himself. There was no excuse. No justification. He had stopped a sitting congresswoman, challenged her right to be there, threatened her with removal, dismissed her credentials, acted solely on his own misplaced authority. His terrible, terrible mistake. And somehow he knew. This moment, this interaction, it wasn't over. It was just beginning. The echoes were already starting. Part 2, the supervisor arrived. Didn't say a word at first. Just surveyed the scene. The lingering onlookers pretending not to watch. The pale, sweating guard. Officer Miller, right? Yes, sir. Report. Concise. Miller swallowed again. Tried to gather his thoughts. Tried to frame it. Tried to make it sound less catastrophic than it felt. I encountered an individual, Congresswoman Crockett, in the hallway. I requested identification per security protocol for ensuring restricted area integrity. The supervisor raised an eyebrow. This isn't a restricted area, Miller. We both know that. Miller's gaze darted nervously. Right, sir, I misspoke. Standard procedure verification. She presented a lapel pin. I didn't immediately recognize its authenticity. Or hers. So you detained her. Questioned her right to be here. I asked for her congressional ID card for verification. She questioned my reasoning. And you escalated. Miller hesitated. There was a misunderstanding, sir, about the necessity of the check. Did you physically impede her? Did you threaten removal? The silence stretched. Miller stared at a point just past the supervisor's shoulder. Yes, sir. I informed her that if she didn't produce ID, she would be escorted out. Before or after, she identified herself as a member of Congress. Before and after, sir. I didn't believe her initially. The supervisor took a slow, deliberate breath. He pinched the bridge of his nose. Miller, what the hell were you thinking? I wasn't thinking clearly, sir. I reacted poorly. Poorly doesn't begin to cover it. Congresswoman Crockett, do you understand the implications? Yes, sir, I do now. The supervisor's voice dropped. Quiet but furious. You stopped a black woman, a member of Congress, wearing her official pin, in a hallway she uses every day. And you threatened to throw her out. Because you didn't recognize her. Or didn't believe her. Tell me which part of that sentence isn't going to explode. Miller visibly wilted. Sir, I swear it wasn't about. Wasn't about what, Miller? Say it. Wasn't about her race. Wasn't about her gender. Wasn't about her authority challenging yours. Because from where I'm standing, it looks like it was about all of the above. He couldn't answer. He just shook his head mutely. A denial that convinced no one. Least of all himself. Where is the Congresswoman now? She proceeded down the hall. With Mr. Henderson from Oversight. David Henderson saw this. Yes, sir, he arrived near the end. He confirmed her identity. Fantastic. Absolutely fantastic. The supervisor's sarcasm was thick enough to cut. So we have a witness. A senior staffer witness. To you harassing and attempting to eject a member. Do you have anything else to add, Miller? Anything at all that makes this sound even remotely justifiable? No, sir. Then give me your radio. And your credentials. You're on administrative leave. Effective immediately. Pending a full investigation. Which I assure you will be thorough. Miller fumbled with the radio clip. His hands were still shaking. He unclipped his badge holder. Handed them over. The weight leaving his belt felt symbolic. Like his authority draining away. Go to the admin office. Wait there. Don't talk to anyone about this. Understood. Yes, sir. Miller turned. Shoulders slumped. Avoiding the eyes of the few remaining onlookers. He walked away. Not towards the exit he had gestured to earlier. But towards an internal office. A place where careers went to die. Or be resuscitated after severe trauma. He didn't feel optimistic about resuscitation. The supervisor watched him go, his expression tight with anger and frustration. He keyed his own radio. "Dispatch, this is Supervisor Hayes. I need Chief Thompson notified immediately. Situation involving Officer Miller and Congresswoman Crockett. Stand by for details." He clicked off the radio, rubbed his temples. This was a nightmare. A self-inflicted wound on the department, on the institution. All because one officer couldn't check his bias at the door, or couldn't handle a calm, direct woman asking legitimate questions. He needed to find Henderson. He needed to get ahead of this, or at least manage the inevitable fallout. But he had a sinking feeling, the kind you get when you know something has already spun completely out of control. The whispers had already started. The phones were already out. The story was already taking flight. Part 3. Jasmine Crockett walked towards the committee room. David Henderson hurried to keep pace beside her. "Are you all right, Congresswoman?" That was unbelievable. She offered a small, tight smile. Unbelievable. Or entirely predictable. He frowned. "What do you mean?" "I mean, David, this isn't the first time. Maybe not this specific scenario. This level of overt aggression. But the questioning looks. The demands for extra proof. The assumption that I don't belong. That happens more often than you might think." Henderson looked genuinely disturbed. "Here in the Capitol. From Capitol Police. Sometimes from staff. Sometimes from other members. It's quieter usually. More subtle. A double take. A hesitation before acknowledging me. Being mistaken for a staffer constantly. Even with the pen. Today was just louder. More blatant." His mask slipped completely. She paused near the entrance to the hearing room, turned to face him fully. He seemed genuinely surprised by her admission, or maybe by her calmness in recounting it. "It's exhausting, David. Having to constantly prove you belong in spaces you've earned the right to be in. Having your credentials questioned. Having your presence treated as suspicious. Today that officer decided his feelings, his assumptions outweighed my reality. My position, my rights. He didn't just question my ID. He questioned my existence in this space." Henderson shook his head slowly. "I'm so sorry that happened, Congresswoman. It's unacceptable. Completely unacceptable. I know you know that. The question is, does the institution know it? Does leadership understand how corrosive this is? Not just for me. For democracy. When the people elected to represent are treated like intruders in the halls of power. What message does that send?" Her gaze was distant for a moment. Thinking back, there was that time early on. Just elected, walking into a members-only elevator. Another member, older, white, looked her up and down. Asked if she was lost, if she needed directions to the staff cafeteria. She had just smiled then, held up her pin, said, "No thank you, colleague. I know exactly where I'm going." His sputtering apologies were almost comical. But the assumption stung. It always stung. This time felt different, though. Sharper, more dangerous. The threat of physical removal. The overt disbelief. The anger in his eyes when she didn't immediately comply. That felt like a line crossed. A dangerous line. Henderson interrupted her thoughts gently. "What do you want to do? Do you want to file a formal complaint? I can help facilitate that. We need to make sure there are consequences." She looked towards the hearing room doors. The sounds of preparation drifted out. Microphones being tested. Papers shuffling. Right now I have a hearing to attend. A job to do. Witnesses to question. Legislation to scrutinize. That's my focus. That's my priority. But yes, there need to be consequences, not just for the officer, but for the system that allows this to happen. The system that makes someone like him feel empowered to act that way, and feel confident he'd face no repercussions. Until he did. Until his bluff was called. Okay, let me know how you want to proceed. I'll back you up completely. Thank you, David. I appreciate that. She took a deep breath, centered herself, pushed the encounter from the forefront of her mind. Compartmentalized, a skill honed over years. Years of navigating spaces not built for her. Let's go to work. She pushed open the door to the hearing room. The atmosphere shifted immediately. Heads turned. Eyes followed her as she walked to her seat on the dais. The low hum of conversation dipped slightly. Had word already spread? Or was it just the usual awareness of a member entering? She couldn't tell. Didn't let herself dwell on it. She arranged her papers, opened her laptop, exchanged brief nods with colleagues, projected calm, professionalism, focus, but underneath, a cold anger simmered. An anger not just at the guard, but at the casual, systemic nature of the bias he represented. He wasn't an anomaly. He was a symptom, and the disease needed treating. Not just the symptom. The hearing began. The gavel fell. Witnesses were sworn in. Opening statements were read. She listened intently, took notes, formulated questions, did her job. But in the back of her mind, the encounter replayed. His laminated smile, his dismissive wave at her pen, his hand reaching out, her quiet refusal, his dawning panic. It fueled her questions now, gave them an extra edge, a sharpness honed by personal experience. She questioned a witness about accountability, about oversight failures, about the abuse of power within systems. Her voice was steady, her queries precise, but the underlying theme resonated with her recent experience. Power unchecked, assumptions unexamined, consequences absent. Across the room, she saw David Henderson slip into the public seating area. He caught her eye briefly, gave a slight nod, a silent message of support, and perhaps a warning. It was starting. The ripples were spreading outwards. Part 4. The hearing droned on. Important work, yes, but the adrenaline from the hallway confrontation was fading, replaced by a weary sort of anger, and a growing awareness. Phones were buzzing, not just hers, vibrating silently on the dais. She could see staffers in the back rows looking down, scrolling, whispering, eyes occasionally flicking towards her. Something was happening outside this room. David slipped out again, returned a few minutes later, caught her eye, subtly shook his head, mouthed the word viral. Her stomach tightened. Of course, someone must have filmed it. Or someone talked. Someone always talks. She maintained her composure, listened to a colleague's rambling question, tried to focus on the witness's answer. But her mind raced. Viral? What did that mean? What clip, what context? Or lack thereof? How was it being framed? Who was controlling the narrative? Not her. Not yet. She felt a familiar frustration. The loss of control over her own story. Her own image. Reduced to a clip. A moment taken out of context. Or maybe perfectly in context, depending on who was watching. She glanced at her own phone. Dozens of notifications. Text, news alerts, social media tags. She couldn't look now. Wouldn't look now. Stay focused. Do the job. The power wasn't in reacting frantically. It was in demonstrating unflappable competence, even when internally churning. Another member finished their questioning. The chairman looked her way. Congresswoman Crockett, any questions for the witness? She leaned into the microphone, her voice clear and steady. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yes, I do. She addressed the witness, a policy expert on bureaucratic systems. Professor, you've spoken about accountability mechanisms. But what happens when the mechanism itself is wielded unjustly? When the rules are selectively applied? When the enforcer becomes the aggressor? The witness looked slightly taken aback by the directness. Well, Congresswoman, that points to a breakdown in oversight. But what about the immediate moment? For the person facing that aggression? When the system designed to protect them is used to target them? What recourse do they have in real time? The witness paused. That's a very difficult situation. Often, the power imbalance is too great in the moment. Documentation is key, witnesses, a formal complaint later. So the burden falls on the victim. To remain calm. To gather evidence, while being potentially threatened or detained unjustly. Is that the system working as intended? Her questions hung in the air. The room felt still. Colleagues looked at her, some with understanding, some with curiosity, some perhaps with discomfort. The witness shifted uneasily. Ideally, no, that's not the intent. Training, de-escalation techniques, clear protocols, these are meant to prevent such scenarios. But when they fail, when the person with the uniform, the badge, the authority, decides you are the problem, based on nothing but their own perception, their own bias, what then? She wasn't really asking the witness anymore. She was asking the room, asking the institution, asking everyone who would later see the clip. The silence stretched. No one had an easy answer. Because there wasn't one. She held the silence for a beat longer. Let the weight of it settle. Then she nodded slowly. Thank you, Professor. That's all, Mr. Chairman. She leaned back from the microphone. Her point made. Not just about the hearing topic, but about the reality she and so many others faced. The chairman cleared his throat. Thank you, Congresswoman. We'll take a brief recess, 10 minutes. The gavel banged. Instantly, the room buzzed. Staffers converged. Colleagues leaned in to talk. Her phone erupted with vibrations. David Henderson appeared at her side almost immediately. It's everywhere, Congresswoman. The video. Someone filmed the end part. Henderson confirming who you were. The guard's face. Your final words to him. Her heart sank slightly. Her final words. Trust you actively undermined today. Said quietly. Meant for him. Now public. She closed her eyes briefly. Okay. Let me see it. David handed her his phone. The video was shaky. Clearly filmed discreetly. But the audio was clear. It caught Henderson's arrival. His sharp questioning of the guard. She's Congresswoman Crockett. The guard's visible shock. Her calm, pointed questions. You didn't recognize me, or you didn't believe me, which is it? The guard's stammering inability to answer. And then her walk away. The pause. The lean-in. The quiet, devastating final line. Trust you actively undermined today. Then her walking away. The camera lingering on the guard's stunned, horrified face. It was stark. Undeniable. She handed the phone back to David. Her expression unreadable. Okay. What's the reaction? Mixed as expected. Huge outpouring of support for you. Outrage over the guard's actions. Stand with Crockett is trending. But also the usual trolls. Accusations that you were playing the victim. That you were disrespectful to authority. That the guard was just doing his job. Some trying to dox the guard already. It's exploding. She nodded slowly. Absorbing it. The predictable cycle of online outrage. Support backlash, polarization. The reduction of a complex, systemic issue into heroes and villains. Though in this case, the roles seemed pretty clear-cut. Any official statement yet? From Capitol Police or leadership? Capitol Police put out a brief statement. Aware of the incident, officer placed on leave, full investigation underway, standard stuff. Nothing from the speaker's office yet, or anyone high up. They're probably scrambling, trying to figure out the politics. As always, she sighed softly. Politics. Even this became politics. A moment of genuine bias. A threat, an abuse of power, filtered through the lens of partisan advantage. Okay, we need a statement. From me. Keep it simple, keep it focused. Acknowledge the incident. Confirm the video is accurate. State that this type of profiling is unacceptable. Emphasize the need for accountability and systemic change. Not just about one officer, but the pattern. And reiterate my focus remains on my work. No attacks, no victim language, just facts and principles. David was already typing notes on his phone. Got it, simple, factual, principled, focus on systemic issues. I'll draft something now. We should get it out before the hearing resumes. Agreed. She stood up. Needed some air. Needed a moment away from the buzzing phones and sympathetic, curious glances. I'm going to step outside for a minute. Be right back. She walked out of the hearing room, past the clusters of whispering staff and reporters who were starting to gather. Ignored their attempts to ask questions. Just needed space. She found a relatively quiet window alcove down the hall. Looked out over the city. The monuments, the symbols of democracy. Symbols that felt complicated today. Her phone buzzed again in her hand. She glanced down. A text from her mother back in Texas. Saw the news. Are you okay, baby girl? Call me when you can. Stay strong. Love you. A wave of emotion washed over her. Stronger than the anger. More profound than the frustration. A deep, bone-weary sadness. That this was still the reality. That her mother still had to worry about these things. That strength was still a daily requirement. Not just for the job, but simply to exist in certain spaces. She took another deep breath. Pushed the sadness down. Locked it away. Strength first. Always strength first. The rest could come later. She turned away from the window. Walked back towards the noise. Towards the fight. It wasn't just about one guard anymore. It was about the entire structure. And she was ready. Part 5. The hearing resumed. But the energy had shifted. Everyone knew. The air crackled with unspoken awareness. Every glance her way felt magnified. Every question she asked seemed laden with subtext. Even the witnesses seemed more deferential. Or perhaps more nervous. The power dynamic in the room had subtly tilted. Not because she had raised her voice, or made demands, but because the truth of her experience, laid bare on video, resonated. It exposed a vulnerability in the system. A hypocrisy. Her calm amplified the guard's aggression. Her restraint highlighted his lack of it. The contrast was stark. Devastating. She focused on the proceedings. Asked pointed questions. Refused to be distracted. But the phone continued its silent, insistent vibrating. A constant reminder of the storm brewing outside. Her comms director slipped into the room. Passed her a folded note. Statement is out, getting massive pickup. Support is overwhelming, trust undermined, also trending now. She nodded almost imperceptibly. Good. The narrative was being shaped. Not just by the raw video, but by her response. Controlled, dignified, focused on the larger issue. A colleague leaned over. Whispered, "You okay, Jasmine? That was unbelievable. We stand with you." "Thank you." She whispered back. "Appreciate that." Another colleague from across the aisle caught her eye, gave a slow, deliberate nod, a gesture of respect, acknowledgement. Hard to say, but it felt different, like the shared space of the Capitol felt a little more shared today. Even across party lines, the shared experience of power and its potential abuse. Maybe, or maybe just political calculation. Recognizing the tide had turned, the hearing finally concluded. As the members filed out, the chairman approached her. Congresswoman Crockett. A word? Yes, Mr. Chairman. He looked uncomfortable, clearly hadn't wanted to address this directly, but felt obligated. Listen, I saw the video. Heard about the incident. Completely unacceptable. Just wanted you to know the committee leadership finds this appalling. We support the investigation. We expect full accountability. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate that. Accountability is essential, but so is addressing the underlying issues. The training, the culture, the biases that allow this to occur. Yes, absolutely. Systemic issues. We need to look at that. Definitely. His agreement felt a little too quick, a little too eager to move on. But it was something, an acknowledgement, from leadership, on the record implicitly. She simply nodded again. Thank you for your concern. As she walked out, the hallway was chaos. Reporters swarmed. Cameras flashed. Microphones were thrust forward. Congresswoman, a comment on the incident. How do you feel about the officer being placed on leave? Is this a pattern of bias from Capitol Police? What do you want to see happen next? Her staff formed a protective semicircle. David Henderson stepped forward. The Congresswoman has released a statement. Please refer to that. She has no further comment at this time. She needs to get to her next meeting. They moved through the throng. Her face remained impassive, calm amidst the storm. She didn't engage, didn't take the bait, didn't feed the frenzy. Her silence was its own statement, her composure its own power. They reached her office, stepped inside. The door closed, shutting out the noise. Temporarily, her chief of staff met them. Phone pressed to her ear. Okay, thanks, keep me posted, bye. She hung up. Okay, it's official. The chief of Capitol Police has requested a meeting. Wants to apologize personally and discuss next steps. When? As soon as possible. Your schedule is packed, but make time. This afternoon, if possible. The chief needs to understand the gravity. Directly from me. Okay, I'll set it up. The phones here are ringing off the hook. Support calls, media requests. Even some constituents calling the D.C. office, furious on your behalf. And the online reaction, it's massive. Way bigger than just D.C. Twitter. It's hit mainstream news now. Every network is covering it. She sat down heavily in her chair, finally letting some of the tension release. It felt disproportionate. One ugly encounter, magnified globally. But maybe that was the point. Maybe it needed this level of visibility. To force a real conversation. To pierce the bubble of complacency. Okay. Let's manage the incoming. Prioritize constituent calls. Draft standard responses for media, referring back to the statement. No cable news hits today. Let the statement speak for itself. Let the institution respond. Right, focus on the work and the chief meeting. Anything else? Just take a breath, Congresswoman. You handled that incredibly well. But it's a lot. She looked at her team. Their concerned faces. Their readiness to support her. Thank you, all of you. Now, let's get back to work. But the image lingered. The guard's face. The dawning horror. The echo of her own quiet words. trust you actively undermined today. It wasn't a victory lap. It was a statement of fact. And the consequences were just beginning to unfold. For him, for the institution, and perhaps even for her. Visibility cuts both ways. Part 6. The meeting with the chief of Capitol Police was tense. Held in a neutral conference room. Away from prying eyes and ears. Just her chief of staff, the chief and his deputy. Chief Thompson began. His voice was grave. Measured. Congresswoman Crockett, I want to offer my sincerest apologies. On behalf of the entire department. What you experienced today was unacceptable. It does not reflect our standards, our training, our values. Officer Miller's actions were wrong. Period. She listened, her expression neutral. Thank you for the apology, Chief Thompson. I appreciate you meeting with me directly. But I need to understand. How does an officer feel empowered to act that way? In direct contradiction to protocols. Against a member of Congress. What breakdown occurred? The chief leaned forward. That's what our internal investigation will determine. Thoroughly and swiftly. Officer Miller is on leave, as you know. His policing powers are suspended pending the outcome. We are reviewing his record, interviewing witnesses, including Mr. Henderson. Reviewing bodycam footage if available. There will be accountability. I assure you. And what does accountability look like to you, Chief? Suspension, retraining, termination. Depending on the findings, Congresswoman. All options are on the table. Disciplinary action will be commensurate with the severity of the policy violations. And the violation of trust. Not just your trust, but the public's trust. The trust of every person who works in or visits this complex. She nodded slowly. Trust. There's that word again. Chief, this isn't just about one officer having a bad day. Or making a mistake. This felt targeted. The dismissal of my credentials. The disbelief. The aggression. It fit a pattern many of us have experienced. Maybe not always this overtly. But it's there. The assumption that certain people don't belong. That they require extra scrutiny. How are you addressing that systemic issue? The bias. Implicit or explicit. The chief exchanged a glance with his deputy. We have ongoing training, Congresswoman. Diversity and inclusion training. Implicit bias training. De-escalation techniques. Clearly, the training wasn't effective for Officer Miller today. Or the culture overrides the training. What are you doing to change the culture? To ensure that serve and protect applies equally to everyone, regardless of who they are, or what they look like. We are constantly striving to improve, Congresswoman. We review our policies regularly. We take feedback seriously. This incident, this will be a catalyst for further review. A hard look at our training effectiveness, our supervision, our internal culture. We have to do better, we will do better. His sincerity seemed genuine. The weight of the situation was clearly visible on his face. This was a crisis for his department. She decided to push further. Gently but firmly. Chief Officer Miller mentioned procedure repeatedly, but couldn't cite one. He claimed it was discretionary. His discretion. What specific protocol governs identification checks in non-restricted hallways like HC5? And what are the limits on officer discretion in such encounters? The deputy chief spoke up. Generally, Congresswoman, in common areas, observation and situational awareness are key. ID checks are typically reserved for restricted access points or specific security alerts. Or if an individual is observed in suspicious activity. There isn't a standard protocol for random, discretionary ID checks of known personnel or members in common hallways. Officer Miller was operating outside established procedures. His discretion appears to have been severely misapplied. Misapplied, That was one word for it. She let the silence sit for a moment. So the system you have in place should have prevented this. The protocols should have stopped him. But they didn't, because he chose to ignore them, or felt entitled to ignore them. When faced with me, that's the core issue, isn't it? The individual bias overriding the institutional rules. The chief nodded grimly. That appears to be the case here, Congresswoman. And it's completely unacceptable. We need to ensure our officers not only know the rules, but understand the why behind them. And understand the profound damage done when they abuse their authority based on personal bias. What happens to Officer Miller now? Practically speaking, the investigation will proceed. He will have representation, due process. We anticipate it will take several weeks to complete fully. You will be kept informed of the findings and the final disposition. And in the meantime, the story is everywhere. The video, my statement. The department is under intense scrutiny. What message are you sending publicly? Beyond the investigation, we issued the initial statement confirming the leave and investigation. We are preparing a more comprehensive public statement now, reaffirming our commitment to fair, unbiased policing, acknowledging the seriousness of this incident, outlining steps we are taking to reinforce training and accountability. We understand the need for transparency and for rebuilding trust. She considered his words. It was mostly the right language, the expected institutional response. Whether it translated into meaningful change remained to be seen. Institutions absorb scandals. They issue reports. They promise reforms. Sometimes things change. Often they revert to the mean. Okay, Chief. I expect to be kept informed. I expect thoroughness. And I expect real consequences. Not just for Officer Miller, but for the conditions that allowed this to happen. Understood, Congresswoman. You have my commitment. The meeting concluded with handshakes. Formal, correct. But the underlying tension remained. As she walked back to her office, her chief of staff spoke quietly. Do you think anything will actually change? She sighed. I don't know. Hope is not a strategy. But pressure works. Public pressure, political pressure. Today generated a lot of pressure. We keep applying it. We don't let them forget. We don't let this fade into just another news cycle. That's how change happens. Slowly, incrementally. By refusing to accept the unacceptable. Her phone buzzed. A news alert headline. Capitol Police Chief vows full investigation into Crockett incident, pledges accountability. The cycle was turning. The institution was responding. But the real test wasn't the promises. It was the follow-through. And the next time. Would there be a next time? And how would it be handled? That remained the unanswered question. Part 7. Days turned into a week. The initial media frenzy subsided slightly, replaced by think pieces, op-eds, cable news panels dissecting the incident. The video played on repeat, her calm face juxtaposed against the guard's aggression and panic. It became a symbol, a Rorschach test for viewers' own biases. For some, she was a hero, calm under pressure, speaking truth to power. For others, she was provocative, disrespectful, playing the race card. The polarization was stark, predictable, exhausting. She tried to tune out the noise, focused on her legislative work. Committee hearings, constituent meetings, floor votes. But the incident lingered. In the way colleagues looked at her. Some with newfound respect, others with wary distance. In the increased security presence, now hyper-aware and almost overly deferential towards her. In the flood of emails and letters. Overwhelmingly supportive. Sharing similar stories of bias faced in everyday life. Thanking her for speaking out, for not backing down. Those messages fueled her. Reminded her why this wasn't just about her. It was about countless others who faced similar indignities without the platform she had. The Capitol Police investigation proceeded quietly. Updates were promised but slow in coming. Bureaucracy grinding along. Officer Miller remained on leave, out of sight. His career likely over. But the systemic questions remained. Then came the unexpected call. From the Speaker's office. Not the Speaker himself, but his top advisor. Requesting a meeting. She agreed, curious, wary. The advisor was smooth, polished. Expressed deep concern over the incident. Commended her handling of the situation. Stressed the importance of ensuring the Capitol was welcoming and safe for everyone. Standard political talk. Then came the pivot. We were thinking, Congresswoman, this incident, while unfortunate, it highlights a broader issue. Security protocols, training, oversight. Perhaps there's an opportunity here for a bipartisan working group to review and recommend improvements. Led by, well, we thought perhaps you might consider co-chairing it. She listened carefully, recognized the political calculus instantly, frame the problem broadly, create a committee, show action is being taken, and co-opt the person who brought the issue to light. Turn the critic into part of the solution. A classic DC maneuver. Who would the other co-chair be? She asked. We have a few senior Republicans in mind, someone respected on security matters, someone who can bring bipartisan consensus. So the solution to biased policing is more bureaucracy. A working group. The advisor smiled smoothly. It's a mechanism for change, Congresswoman. A way to ensure these issues are addressed seriously, institutionally. With buy-in from both sides. It gives you a direct role in shaping the reforms, leveraging your experience, your perspective. And it sends a powerful message. That leadership is taking this seriously. She considered it. The cynicism warred with pragmatism. Was it a genuine attempt at reform? Or just optics, damage control? Probably a bit of both. But could it be used? Could such a platform actually achieve something meaningful? Or would it just dilute the issue, bury it in endless meetings and reports? Thank you for the offer. I appreciate the gesture. Let me think about it. I need to consider if that's the most effective way to achieve real change. Of course, take your time. The advisor seemed confident she would eventually agree. Most politicians craved a seat at the table. A co-chair title. But she wasn't most politicians. She walked back to her office thinking. A working group felt safe. Too safe. It diffused responsibility. It slowed things down. Real change often required continued friction. Continued pressure. Not comfortable consensus. Her chief of staff met her at the door. Well, how did it go? What did they want? They want me to co-chair a bipartisan working group on Capitol security protocols and training. Ah, the classic form a committee solution. Exactly. Are you going to do it? I don't think so. It feels like a way to manage the issue, not solve it. To neutralize the pressure. I think my voice is stronger right now from the outside. Continuing to demand accountability. Continuing to highlight the systemic problems. Not getting bogged down in procedural wrangling. Her chief of staff nodded slowly. I think you're right. It keeps the focus on the core problem. Bias accountability. Not just tweaking protocols. Okay, so we politely decline. And keep pushing. Yes. Keep pushing. The fight wasn't over. It was just entering a new phase. Less visceral than the hallway confrontation. More strategic. More focused on the long game. Changing hearts and minds was hard. Changing institutions, even harder. But she wouldn't back down. The trust undermined that day wasn't just hers. It was the public's trust in the fairness of the institution itself. Restoring that required more than apologies and working groups. It required demonstrable, lasting change. and she intended to see it through. Part 8. The online world churned on. The video clip became a meme. Remixed, duetted on TikTok. Analyzed frame by frame by amateur body language experts. Trust undermined became a hashtag used far beyond the initial incident. Applied to other situations of perceived bias. Other abuses of authority. It entered the lexicon. Morning news shows debated it. Late-night comics joked about it. Podcasters dedicated entire episodes to it. Some lauded her poise, her surgical precision. She didn't yell, she didn't scream. She just calmly dismantled him with facts. That slow blink, iconic. The quiet power was everything. Others painted her as calculating, aggressive in her calmness. She knew exactly what she was doing, setting him up. Typical politician playing the victim. Why didn't she just show her ID? Avoided the whole thing. The guard, Officer Miller, became a canvas onto which people projected their own views. A symbol of racist policing for some. A scapegoat just doing his job for others. His digital footprint was scrubbed, his face blurred in some rebroadcasts. But the damage was done. He became synonymous with the incident. His name forever linked to the viral moment of his downfall. Headlines scrolled across simulated phone screens in the narrative. Crockett declines role on security panel, citing need for independent accountability. Capitol Police Union defends Officer Miller, calls for due process. Experts weigh in. Implicit bias training effectiveness questioned after Crockett incident. Trust undermined. How one viral moment sparked a national conversation. Social media snippets flashed by. A TikTok user reacting, okay, but the way she just stood there, and let HIM fall apart, Queen energy. An ex-post, so tired of everything being about race, he asked for ID, big deal, Blue Lives Matter. Another ex-post, correction, he demanded ID from a sitting congresswoman wearing her pin because he didn't believe she belonged. That's not procedure, that's bias. Stand with Crockett. A podcast soundbite. And what this really exposes is the fragility of authority when it's based on assumption rather than fact. Crockett held up a mirror, and the system didn't like what it saw. The ripple effect was undeniable. Stories emerged of other staffers, lobbyists, even visitors, recounting similar experiences of being unduly questioned or made to feel unwelcome based on their appearance. The Crockett incident became a focal point. A crystallizing moment. It gave language to a shared frustration. Her office continued its work, pushing legislation, engaging in debates. But her profile was irrevocably changed. She was no longer just a congresswoman from Texas. She was the congresswoman who calmly faced down bias in the halls of power. The one who delivered the mic drop line about trust. It brought opportunities, more media requests, higher profile committee assignments. It also brought more scrutiny, more attacks, more threats. Security around her had to be reassessed, increased. A stark reminder of the dangers that came with visibility, especially for a black woman challenging the status quo. She remembered a conversation with her grandmother years ago, before she even ran for office. Baby girl, when you stand up tall, some folks ain't gonna like the shade you cast. They'll try to chop you down. You gotta have deep roots. Her roots were deep. In her family, her community, her convictions. But some days the wind blew hard. This incident, the fallout, it was a gale force wind. Testing those roots. She wouldn't let it break her. She wouldn't let it silence her. She would use the platform, use the moment, not for personal gain, but to keep pushing for that deeper systemic change. The working group she declined. It formed anyway, issued a predictable report months later. Recommended more training, minor procedural tweaks. Nothing fundamental changed immediately. But the conversation had shifted. The awareness was heightened. The next Officer Miller would, perhaps, think twice. Or perhaps not. Change was slow, painfully slow. But the fight continued. Part 9. Months passed. The news cycle moved on. Other outrages captured the public's attention, but the Crockett incident left a residue, a watermark on the institution. Officer Miller quietly resigned from the Capitol Police Force before the investigation officially concluded. No public fanfare, no final statement. He faded from view, a casualty of his own actions and the unforgiving glare of the viral spotlight. Congresswoman Crockett continued her work. She became a sought-after voice on issues of justice, bias, and accountability. Her calm demeanor in the face of adversity became her trademark. But those close to her knew the fire beneath the surface, the unwavering resolve. She never forgot the feeling of being challenged, dismissed, threatened, in the very place she was elected to serve. She used that memory as fuel. There was a subtle shift in the Capitol hallways. Staffers seemed more aware. Security personnel, perhaps a bit more cautious. More deliberate in their interactions. Was it real change? Or just temporary vigilance? Hard to say. One afternoon, walking down that same hallway near HC5, she saw a new officer at the post Miller used to sometimes occupy. A young woman, Latina. As Crockett approached, the officer nodded respectfully. "Good afternoon, Congresswoman." "Good afternoon, officer." A simple exchange. Normal, professional, unremarkable. As it should be. Maybe something had changed. Or maybe this officer simply saw her for who she was. A member of Congress. Doing her job. Belonging. No questions asked, no proof demanded. Just mutual respect. It wasn't a grand victory. No triumphant music swelled. It was just normal. And in its normality, it felt like progress. A small sign that perhaps the trust wasn't entirely broken. That it could be rebuilt. One interaction at a time. Later that day, she saw an article online. 1 year later, how the Crockett incident reshaped Capitol Police training. It detailed new modules on implicit bias, stricter guidelines on discretionary checks, enhanced supervisor oversight, concrete steps, institutional responses, driven in large part by the pressure generated from that one viral moment. The article quoted an anonymous senior officer. "That incident was a wake-up call, painful but necessary. We had to look hard at ourselves. We still have work to do, but we are committed to getting it right." Getting it right. The goal was simple. The path complex. She closed the laptop, looked out her office window. The work continued. The fight for fairness, for equal treatment, for trust. It wasn't about one guard, one incident. It was about the soul of the institution and the promise of the democracy it represented. A promise still striving to be fully realized. For everyone. Part 10. The story doesn't end with a neat bow. There's no final confrontation, no dramatic apology accepted or rejected. Officer Miller is gone. The institution churns on, implementing changes, promising improvements. Congresswoman Crockett continues her work, her profile elevated, her voice amplified. The viral video still exists online. A permanent digital scar. A reminder. Sometimes it resurfaces. Shared when similar incidents occur elsewhere. Used as an example in training seminars. Cited in academic papers on bias and policing. Its resonance continues. The quiet dominance she displayed in that moment wasn't about defeating one man. It was about asserting her right to be. Her right to serve. Her right to exist without suspicion in the halls of power. The victory wasn't loud. It was the steady, unwavering continuation of her work. The refusal to be intimidated or diminished. The power wasn't in the confrontation itself, but in the aftermath. In the way her calm truth rippled outwards. Forcing reflection. Demanding change. It wasn't a comfortable victory. It carried the weight of knowing how easily it could have gone differently. The weight of knowing how many others face similar bias without the shield of her office. The weight of the ongoing struggle. The final scene isn't a celebration. It's just her, walking purposefully down a Capitol hallway. Maybe the same one, maybe another. Nodding to colleagues, focused on the path ahead, the pin glinting on her lapel. Not as a shield, but as a statement, a symbol of the trust placed in her. Trust she carried, trust she honored, trust that day by day, interaction by interaction, she worked to ensure the institution itself was worthy of. The camera lingers for a moment. Then she turns a corner and is gone, continuing the work. The quiet hum of the building settles back in. No final words, just the resonance, the echo of trust undermined, and the enduring fight to restore it.